the computer. All right. So we all went out somewhere in our own nature or indoors to do possibly a comparison study, comparing two different objects, or I want to keep it open, whatever jumps out and wants you to look at it, because I think when we slow down, nature is going to be speaking to us. So we're practicing those muscles on how to identify nature and listen for those subtle cues that they're giving us. So I thought we'd just jump into our sharing. And is there anyone who would like to share first?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll go ahead, get it over with.
Oh.
Anyway, I did.
Sheila, before you start, I just want to reiterate. So we're, this is a place that's really friendly and kind. And so don't feel, no one should feel, you know, frightened to share their work, because we're all starting at different places in our nature journaling journey. And, you know, we can learn from someone who's just starting to nature journal, because everyone sees, right? Everyone sees nature in a different way. So, and when you're watching these, take a look at, maybe ideas that people might be able to, that you might be able to use, take away. Okay, so I'm trying to unmute. Something's going on with my mute. So Kate, are you able to unmute yourself?
There we go. Now
okay. Okay, good. All right. So Celia, you want to go ahead and share your page?
So I did a compare and contrast of meat. I don't know if you can see this. This is beet leaf. This one's the beet on the left, and this is mustard that's in my garden. So you can see they both have, you know, a lot of greens and then reddish vines. The mustard has a lot more texture to the leaves and a more purple. But the where the beet is more stark. Not stark, that's not the right word. Not as much texture and not as much variety in there, although of course when you look deep you see it, but there's more the sort of green and the dark veins. And the mustard just had all these variations of green and purples and curvy leaves, and they're just super cool. And I had been noticing that they looked pretty similar. And I never thought that mustard and beet would be similar looking. So I saw them in the garden. So I started, this is where I did the run out of time deal. Started to try to do a detail and show and tell. So I, you know, picked leaf from this. So this is the mustard and this is the beet. So they're really similar for being such big different vegetables, but also quite a lot of differences. So
Celia, that's great. You could watch it grow over time too, right? You said that's in your garden, so you might see, do the leaves change? Do they look more different when they get bigger?
Yeah.
And putting those questions on there would be really good too.
Yeah, I wanted to, in fact, I got so sort of into it that once we're off, I wanna keep working on it. You know, and that was partly why I, you know, picked the leaves. It's cold outside. Although I did go outside, the mustard is in a window box, so I was able to stay inside, but the beet, I went out. But yeah, I do want to keep working on it and do a lot of animating, just write down what I just said.
Yeah.
And that kind of, and in this case, I used colored pencil, no paint today. Which often works really well for, you know, little botanicals. Well, I mean, watercolor's fun too, but.
Yeah, thank you for your share. Yeah, like you said, you know, sometimes it's those plants that don't look like they might be different at first. And as you start to take a look more closely at it, you'll see subtle details that weren't apparent before. All right, is there someone else who would like to share next? You can go ahead and, I think you should be able to unmute yourself and share. Oh, Cindy and Ken. Go ahead.
Here we go. So I did the comparison, and so what we did was I did a nasturtium on one side, and then a California poppy on the other. I didn't get a chance to paint it in yet, so it's going to be a future coloring book page for me. One thing that surprised me though, and I did sketch it, and here's a show and tell thing, is I never noticed that the back of the nasturtium has this little tail. So I'm going to pull this apart and figure that what is that?
Mm-hmm.
There's the stem, but then there's this little tail on the back, and every flower has one. That was just a thing that made me look closer and made me wonder what the heck is that and what is it called?
And Cindy, can you hold up your page again? So I wanted to point out to others they couldn't see. So Cindy went and measured like the length of the petal or the width of the petal, how tall the plant section of plant was, and writing observations of what she sees. Oh, and then the poppy of different stages and measuring things. Yeah, that's great. Like lots of like words. The more words and numbers we can put in, this is going to be a page that you will remember.
And Melinda, I had just one technical thing. I was measuring in inches, but I noticed you measured in metric.
Metric, yeah. So you can use whatever you have. I am in science we default to using metric because it's universal. So perhaps someone in Sweden is going to be using metric, right? So metric and Celsius always works better. Yeah, so we can share our work more readily if we use metric. But like today, I only had a ruler that had inches. It didn't have centimeters on it. So today I measured something in inches, which is totally fine. So whatever you have. And if you don't have a ruler, here's the thing. You can take, if you have a 3x5 index card, if you have an 8.5 by 11 paper, right? You know that this is 8.5 by 11 inches. You can hold it up. So 11 inches, half is going to be 5.5 inches, right? You can use all different things to measure. You can measure your hand. Maybe it's as long as your thumb. And later on, you can measure your thumb and use that as a measuring tool. So if you don't have a ruler, you can use other things to measure.
So I decided to keep on going with my lawn study as I did last week. But in this case, what I used is the paint can method, in that I put a paint can down on my lawn, and then I took it off and I counted every plant that had been crushed by the paint can. So I got 8 different kinds of grasses and different colors, and then I counted them and put them in proportion. And then you can see at the bottom that I did a pie graph of them. I measured all the plants, and what I was wondering is how much different it would be in summer, whether there'd be a different proportion or things like that. And I also wondered how many of these grasses are California natives or how many of them are invasive species.
Awesome. I love all that data. That's great. You know, by recording all of this today with the date, I forgot to say, for those of you who are new, we put metadata on every page, and that is just data about today. So you put the date always, and put the time is good, the weather, your location, maybe what town you're in, or if it's in your backyard, and any other details like this is your lawn wildflower study or weed study. And that way, when, like Ken is saying, he wants to revisit this in the summer or at a different time of year, when you're flipping through your nature journal, you'll know what time of year it was, and you don't have to guess. And you know, counting too, quantifying, so measuring the lengths and counting how many of something there is. It's great information because it helps us look more closely. Thank you for sharing your pages. Who would like to go next? Carol, Green Street. I'm trying to, there you go. You're unmuted.
Okay, great. All right, so I did the comparison study. I chose some leaves that actually superficially looked quite a lot alike. There was a friend gave me one of her mother's begonias a long time ago, and then I had a heuchera, which is a coral bell. And I looked at those and I tried to compare the colors and the sizes and the shapes and what was similar and dissimilar. And I'm very slow at this, so I sort of started with pencil, and maybe I'll go back with some watercolor on some of them, but trying to get the flowers and the leaves and compare the textures and sizes and what was similar and dissimilar. And basically that's it.
Wow.
One other thing I'd say, for those people who want a ruler, I found someone in a California Naturalist class, I saw someone with this, and I finally found one. It's got inches and centimeters on it, and so it's a pen that you can take with you, and it's ours, so that's your measurement. So anyway.
That's a great tool, Carol. Thank you for sharing that. And I like how to set off the information. So sometimes it's page layout, putting out clumping information, like information together is a really great way to make it visually more easy to understand, like Carol did with maybe putting a little bit of color behind one of the plants and another color behind the other plant. That just kind of sets it off a little bit too. So, and it was great information and observation on there. Thank you. Let's see, did I see Valentine?
Yeah.
Would you like to share?
Sure. Yeah. So I wouldn't say that mine is particularly visually organized, but I did take a lot of notes.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at a potato vine clump of flowers in my yard, and then an umbral, a currant that's kind of an umbral shape that's a little bit different from some of the other currants I normally see. And so I compared the two. They're both white kind of clusters of flowers. And so I used, my notes are pretty small, but I love that you did the cross section. And so that was really helpful to notice some of the difference between these two 5-petaled flowers. And so it's pretty small, but I did a little, I don't know if you can see, I can't see very well. My kids are kind of clustered around me, so it's hard to see. But right here, I did what the cross section of the petal looks like for the potato vine compared to this little cup-like cross section of the currant flower, which was really fun to see. And then I noticed that with the potato vine, there was a really, it has a really fun reproductive organs. Part of it looks like a tuning fork if you're really close. So I recommend looking at a potato vine flower. It's really fun. So I just noticed a lot of things that I hadn't noticed before. And then I made a little section over here for things that were similar between both of them. And I thought that was really kind of a fun exercise I enjoyed.
Good idea. Good idea. I love all of those notes. Valentine is a nature teacher with me, and so she's used to seeing nature, but I'm glad that there's something that you observe that you didn't see before. I think it's the process of drawing is really helpful. I wanted to hold up this. This is an example of the comparison of the two things, and Valentine was talking about a similarity. So you might have a list of characteristics about leaf 1, characteristics about leaf 2, but then there might be some details about them that they both have. So this is called a Venn diagram, or type of Venn, V-E-N-N, and where it has, you might see it in circles, sometimes a circle for one guy, circle for another, and then where they overlap is where they have something in common. So that could be a technique you can use in your page to give it a little bit more visually easy to read. And don't worry about the disorganization. I mean, that our Nature Journal pages are here. It's process of our brain going onto paper. So the more that we do this, the more organized it'll become with time.
And someone asked if the kids did journals, and they did. I could show mine. It sounds like Griffin is interested in sharing.
I don't really want to share.
You don't have
Okay, you don't have to if you don't want to, but Griffin is going to show us.
I did 2 conch shell type shells. I put the similarities in the middle and the differences on the sides. For one of the inside of one of the conch shells is like pinkish, and the other one's like tan.
Ooh. So it's a little bit blurry on the screen, but I think what I'm making out is you drew like the top of the shell, and then you did the underneath where it's open.
Yeah.
And then I see all those measurements, and then little lines that go out to pointing all the details that you noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Nice work.
Put this in the corner, Mom. Okay.
All right. Is there anyone else who would like to share? Looks like Jenny. Let me unmute you. Okay, you're unmuted, Jenny.
Okay. Tanaya's gonna go first.
Okay.
Okay. So, for the sound map, I did this, and I drew wavy lines, but also did the sounds. Like one was a rooster and chickens, and I just made up sounds that they sounded like. And like the small tiny lines were the quick and high calls. And yeah.
Yeah.
But also, my like the identify like
Comparison.
I did blackberry leaf and raspberry leaf. They look the same, but I noticed that the blackberry leaf was bigger than the raspberry, and the raspberry had like less of the less of the pokes, and they weren't as strong. But also on the leaves they didn't have that many teeth, and this one had more pokes and they were really strong, but also it had lots of tiny things.
Oh, so you did a close-up of the leaf too with all the pokies on it.
But I also wanted to show you two things. This I didn't do with any color. I did it all with flowers.
Yay! Look at that.
So this is a tree. It's got plantain for this. This is dirt. This is a ball that I made with
Calendula.
no, the ball is made out of honeysuckle, and then I made this bird here that is, I forget what the flower is called.
It's like the crane's bill, the edible one. With
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also the wings are
Calendula.
yeah. This sun is sourgrass.
Yeah.
And this is like this. It's a purple flower that you can make earrings out of. And that redwood tree, I used the tips, and it kind of turned out brown, which was an interesting discovery. But yeah.
Yeah, those are great discoveries and experiments, Tanaya.
You don't actually need watercolors. You can make your own.
Exactly.
I did a comparison of oxalis, the sourgrass, and clover leaves because they're kind of similar.
Yeah, they are.
And I did the questions of I notice, I wonder, and it reminds me. And I noticed that the sourgrass was really smooth and had these little darker spots on the leaves. The stems and leaves were all smooth and much more heart-shaped. And then the clover, and also the flower started from the base and had a longer taproot. And the clover had fuzz on it all over. I tried to do like a sideways view. And the root was shorter, and the stem came up and kind of unfurled into groups of leaves. So yeah, that was fun. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I haven't noticed that myself. So that's really cool when you pull up the little plants that you can see a lot more detail in them. Yeah, and I wanted to go back to Naya. I noticed that you use those lines to show the sounds of the birds. So that was really cool, using the higher lines for higher notes and the lower ones for low notes. Yeah, it's a great way to represent sound on your sound map. All right, thank you for sharing. Let me see, who else? I think Sharon had her hand up. Sharon. Hold on, I'm trying to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Okay, yes. Wait, oh no, I think I mute. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So this was the first time. Oh, first I wanted to say I'm so impressed by everybody's work. And when we're muted, you know, the only thing I can do is this, or maybe something in the chat. But I want you all to know how impressed I am. And then sometimes it's not clear how to make it focus. So You should tell me if it's focused.
Yeah, and I think it might just be the camera sensor.
Uh-huh.
Are you on
Okay.
a laptop or computer
Yeah,
or a device?
I'm on a laptop. So does that look focused to you?
It's a little blurry. I don't know, maybe. Yeah, it's a little bit easier to see.
Okay, but still difficult. Then. So
Yeah,
I did,
you can describe what you have on there.
okay, I did a comparison of 2 houseplants because it was cold outside. So I wimped out. But they were both 9 inches long, and I didn't know what they were called. And I don't even, so I used iNaturalist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not totally sure they were right. One is Arodea, which, or maybe a philodendron, and then the other one is Codium. So I'm not sure. And iNaturalist doesn't seem to give you a common name either, which might be better.
Yeah, I think sometimes if iNaturalist is not able to identify it to the species, they'll give it like a family or group name. It may not have a common word. But I think what you're doing is perfect. Even if you don't know the name, by describing it and drawing it in detail, I see you did the front and the backs of the leaves.
Yeah.
And the cross section is really helpful, like writing down maybe the texture of the leaf and, you know, if it has a smell, maybe is it just a one leaf on a stem, or is it clustered, or, you know, is it branching? All of those details that you include in there will help you identify it better later.
Okay. And this one had a lot of red in it. This one had no red. So I didn't get to finish painting it. But my intent is to have draw a full plant picture down here. So I enjoyed it. This is the first time I've really used writing, making notes.
Great. Yeah. It's a good nature journal page. And then when you have time later, sit down and you can add more detail and put a title on there and put your metadata for today. Yeah, it's a good start. All right. Is there someone else who'd like to share? Anyone else? Okay. Well, you guys are thinking about if you'd like. Oh, Kate. Kate is going to share. Let me see if I can unmute you.
There we
Okay.
go.
Ready? Go ahead, Kate.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I did kind of a comparison of 2 weeds that are in my yard, and they're not super detailed, but this one, they both reminded me of plants that are in the kind of the lettuce grouping of plants. And actually the things that really stood out to me for both of them were the differences in the stems that I kind of looked at, because one of them was, this one was extremely spiny and hairy, and this one was smooth but with these very parallel veins that went up, and it was kind of alternating between this like green and magenta color. And I did the notice, wonder, and reminds me of for each one. And some of the things that I noticed for the one with the spiny stem was that it was alternate. The leaves were coming off of the main stem in an alternate pattern. They're purple with hair-like spines. The plant is about 13 inches tall. And then the spines, I kind of thought that they were gonna be on the bottom side of the leaf as well, but actually it was just one long ridge. I don't know if you can actually see this very well, but it was one long ridge of spines just on the leaf stem and not at all on the bottom of the leaf, which I found interesting. And the texture of the spines was very bendy and not actually very sharp, almost like they were plastic in a way. And one of the things that I wondered is like, why is the stem spiny all the way around, but the leaves only have spines on the bottom of the stem? And is it in the lettuce family, And what does the flower look like? Because a lot of the other plants that are weeds in my garden or in my yard are flowering already. And I'm wondering why that one's not flowering. And then there was some damage on the leaves, so I asked what damaged the leaves. And then it reminds me of dandelion, lettuce, bitterness, and the bottom of the leaf where the spines were reminded me of cilia on different animals.
Yeah.
Around. And then the second one had these big leaves that actually wrapped, I didn't really draw it very well, but they were kind of heart-shaped, and the back, like the lobed part of the heart, wrapped around the base of the stem all the way. I just wondered why, like from an evolutionary standpoint, why would it do that? What would be the advantage there? And yeah, and there were a lot of different leaf morphologies on that same plant. And for the second plant, it did have flowers and had that very dandelionish sunflower type flower pattern. And the main stem actually branched into several other stems rather than having only one main stem that leaves came off of. This one actually had stems coming off of the main stem. So that was it.
Yeah, that was a lot of observation on two little weeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just reminding me that as you're describing the leaf shapes that, you know, you can go onto different websites to look for charts. This is what I find is helpful. Is even Wikipedia, if you go and look up leaf, it gives you lots of resources. And I just saw that earlier this week that there's little charts of leaf margins, like different ways that the edges of the leaf are shaped and how to call them. Like if you don't know what it's called, you don't have to look it up, but what I'm just saying is if this calls to you and you want to deepen your understanding about leaves, you can go and look up, because there's a special name for that heart-shaped leaf that wraps around the stem. I can't remember what it's called, but I remember seeing like a mustard plant or something that did that. So, you know, that'll give you also the vein patterns. So as we do this practice more, you'll notice that the veins on the leaves are not a main one with branching all the time. There's all different kinds. So yeah, there's lots of resources, but we can't use those resources if we're not observing the real thing in our hands or in our nature. So yeah, this is really great information. We're all learning from each other about what we've observed. So I love that. I'm learning too from everyone shares. Let's see. Yes, Cindy, let's see, unmute you. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Just sorry to interrupt, but we gotta go because we gotta eat lunch.
Okay, great. Bye,
Thanks for
Cindy.
sharing, everybody.
Yeah.
Hope to see you next week.
All
Okay,
right.
bye.
See you next week. Bye, Cindy and Ken. All right. Is there anyone else who'd like to share? Yeah, Ross? Is your hand up? Okay, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Let's see here. I picked two plants out in the yard. Can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, I picked two plants out in the yard that I actually don't know what either one of them are, and I've been wondering. So I thought it was a good opportunity to get a little closer look. I can't see what I wrote here. One second. I noticed, let me actually just pull it up here. I actually brought one of them in with me. So this one right here, I noticed at first the different stages of the flowers that are blooming.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are the little tight pods that are really nice and tight together. And then some of them are a little bit small and they're starting to bloom. And I noticed all those ones are pink. Forget-me-not. Interesting. I noticed those ones are pink, and then the ones that are fully bloomed are like a light blue or almost like a purple color. And then also the stem is hairy all the way around it. And it almost looks, there's some ridges on it going straight up, but it's not like the mint that's a perfect square. This one is more like, I think it's 5-sided as far as I could tell. But it's almost more like it's actually a full circle, but with straight veins going up 5 different spots, which I found interesting because there's 5 petals.
Uh-huh.
There's a pattern of 5 lines in between the petals. And the leaves on that one, let's see here. The leaves on that one are hairy, and the vein patterns seem pretty straightforward, like the standard offshoots just kind of straight from the stem going up. And then, let's see here, purple, pink. That's mostly for that one. And then, so the other one that I grabbed was totally different. The stem is completely circular and really solid as well. You can't squish it very much, or it's super sturdy. There's a little bit of purple going up it as well, but I also noticed that the leaves on this one are opposite instead of alternate. And one thing that I was wondering about this one is from the base of it, if you go upward, the leaves are shaped. So this one would be going out like right here. And then as you turn it, it's like they go opposite ways. And I was wondering if that would be so the lower leaves can still get sun. And then you go up and this one is kind of switched on it so the ones below it could get sun. So I thought that was kind of neat. I never really noticed.
Yeah, those are great I wonder questions.
Yeah, how much the plant is working to make sure that its entire structure gets the nutrients it needs. Those ones are smooth leaves on that one, but there's hair on the outside, on the outer edge. And when I started to look into the structure of the actual leaf on this one, the vein pattern reminded me of a turtle shell. And then I looked a little closer and it actually reminded me of broccoli as well. If you're looking at broccoli from the top view, how it's just kind of like rigid or like little bubbles everywhere. I think that's pretty much what I've got.
Awesome, Ross. That's so cool. The humble little weeds in our garden. I wanted to point out that you mentioned the 5-part symmetry and then connecting it to the 5-part petals of the flowers. I mean, those are really great observations that you're making. And I like your squishability test, like, you know, taking the stem and squishing it and you know, I mean, you can use whatever metric you want, right? And to compare those two. And I also wanted to point out that it's less important to know what it is, to know the name, than it is to know how to look at it. So just, you know, don't feel like, I don't know what this is, I don't know how to find the name. It's okay. You know, this process is we're building those muscles of observing so that we can notice. So if we go to a field guide, we're going to need to know, is it opposite leaves? Does it have hair? Is it shaped this way? Is it stiff? Is it short? Is it tall? Is it long? And those clues that you're practicing right now are going to give you an ability to look it up in a field guide. I know that currently in our technology, we have an ability to snap a picture and get a name, but I think it's just a reflection of our society of wanting everything so quick. So what we're doing is, it's a really helpful tool, and I use it too when I can't identify something, but I also want to step back and just be okay with not knowing and observing and recording it into your book. Because if you take a picture of something and identify it on iNaturalist, you probably won't remember the name of it. This happens to me. I don't remember the name of a plant that I've identified on iNaturalist, but if I take the time to observe it and nature journal it, it sticks in my memory. It gets stored in a different process in your brain. So if you want to be smarter and learn more, do more nature journaling. Let's see, okay. Okay, Brian. Let's see if I can unmute you. Are we unmuting each other? Hold on. Okay, let me see. I'm gonna unmute. Oh, you got it?
On
All right.
Yeah, I think for this particular one, it's a little unusual since I'm the co-host. So let's see here. So we went outside and compared 2 annuals, just a marigold and a viola, just because they were 2 different colors, but somewhat similar. And we did this sort of quickly because it started to rain and my children are delicate. So if they were still hunting for eggs, they would have been just fine. But for this exercise, it was quick. So what we noticed first right off the bat is the color is much different. So the violas that we have are a couple different colors, but they're uniform. throughout. So the purple violas are purple. The yellow that we're looking here were yellow. They had little black, not veins, but marks on the tops of them, but otherwise they were yellow. The marigolds were two-toned. I found it difficult to do the comparison like line by line. So if I was looking at the color, I could sort of do that, but then I started making the notes around each one as if I was doing an individual analysis. And so once we came back inside, I found it a little bit easier to sort of condense the information rather than doing it at the same moment. So we didn't get too far. The general shape of the plants are a little bit different. One was much bushier, one was much more delicate with fewer leaves. At this point, they're still young. Although the marigold's been there for, it's an annual, but it's self-sows, and so it's been in that pot for quite a while. So it looks older even though it's still young, but it's just more grown out. The violas are a little more delicate and thinner stems, and so we got a little ways in, and that's about what we could do. But it was an interesting exercise, and I found it much more challenging than just saying observations for one plant species.
Yeah, Brian, I like the little color swatch too. Can you hold that up, the little squares? So if you're in the field and you don't have very much time, you can sketch with like the drawing and your notes, and then put a little dab of color if you have your color pencil, so you don't have to color the whole thing in the field. And that way when you come back inside, you remember how to match the color. If that's just another level of color matching. So you don't have to, but that's kind of a neat way to do it. And then plucking the petals off too, it gives you a little bit closer view of what's going on. Yeah, and do what works for you. You don't have to go line by line and compare. But I think if you just use the idea of like noticing about each one on two different columns, you'll start to see the patterns emerge. Yeah. And I like the squares around the data too, so you can read it better. Okay, I'm gonna share mine. So I was gonna go outside, but when I left my room here and walked into the living room, my goldfish were calling to me, and they have been wanting me to draw them for some time because I have my daughter has three that are very different in body shape. And so today I walked over there and stood in front of the tank and decided to draw the two different goldfish. And it's interesting, when you draw something, you pay attention to it in a way that you don't when you're just looking. So the whole page here is Callie is a fancy goldfish versus Goldie the Oranda. And so what I noticed first was their body shape. So this one was much stouter with long flowy tails, and this one is more of a quote unquote traditional streamlined fish shape. And they were moving around a lot, so I had to keep jumping back and forth between the two pictures. And then the front view, this little guy is really fat and he's like rounded. And so what was the questions that came into my head is like, this poor little fish is not very streamlined. So I did a plan view, which is a view from above of the fish moving through the water, and how a ball is not as streamlined as this, fish shape. And looking at it straight on too, he is much more streamlined than this guy is. And then it made me wonder, why do they breed a fish like this in the first place that can't swim very well? Because I noticed that when he's swimming, he has to swing his head and his tail really vigorously back and forth just to get forward momentum. So I'm still working out how to draw these arrows and show movement, but this was like my attempt here. And then this fish, all he had to do was flick his tail a little bit and he can go across the fish tank. So, there's benefits in having this fish shape, but I think humans want to have unusual fish, so we breed ones with unusual characteristics. Another thing that I noticed was I did a Venn diagram down here. And so I put some characteristics about this fish in yellow and this fish here in blue that were specific to those two individuals. And then I blended the yellow and blue to make green, and then put the things that were similar about those fish. So it really stretched my brain to think about what is similar, like to step back and say, what do I notice as if I'd never seen this fish before? Like if I'd never seen a goldfish, how can I look at this? How can I ask questions? So it's just this exercise in shifting the way that we use our senses when we're have something in our focus. So I just want to check in and say, did everyone get a chance to share? That wants to share? Okay, all right, and I'm just gonna see if so yeah, we learned a lot of techniques today, like the cross section and doing the comparison. I saw a lot of observations of like the leaves, like how they're arranged on plants. Let's see, what is the name of the diagram? The Venn diagram, the overlapping boxes like this. It's VENN. And I think if you look that up, you'll get samples of it. VENN, Venn diagram. And we talked about, what else did we talk about? I didn't talk about using different views, but I think you guys have started to do that. You know, this is a side view and a front view. You can do a top view, bottom view, an angled view, just so that you can get more information about the subjects. And if you're curious, you can go and look up the information, and you can do another Nature Journal page with more information about, hey, I found out that this is this kind of plant and this is the habitat it likes, or I found out that it's medicinal and it has these qualities, or that, hey, in the summertime it's going to produce fruit. I'm going to keep an eye on this and see what happens. So we're just kind of touching the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. So, you know, don't feel, if you are feeling that this is new and it's disorganized, you're on the right track. You can all do this by practice. And what John Muir Laws always talks about is that, you know, you can become proficient in anything with practice. And he talks about drawing using pencil miles. So the number of so every time you're sitting down and drawing, you're adding more pencil miles to your repertoire. So the more pencil miles you have, the more you will start to see things and draw things in a way that is more pleasing to you. And so we're not about drawing, you know, beautiful pieces of artwork, but we are about like observing what we see in nature and rendering something that looks like what we're seeing, and asking questions and being curious, getting to know what's in our backyard. So with that, I would love to invite you guys to try this again later this week. I know a lot of you are on computers doing work and might be overwhelmed, but you know, if you're feeling that itch to just get away from the computer, go outside, you know, or to your fridge, maybe pull out broccoli and cauliflower and see like what's the difference between those two, or you know, I don't know, potato and a yam, or you know, whatever you have in your house, and try this again. I will post in the Monterey Bay Nature Journal Club Facebook page my pages, so if you guys want to post your pages so that we can comment and give positive feedback to everybody and learn from each other, that will be really great. I see Rosemary's already on her way to the fridge. And so if you have any questions, you can feel free to post on Facebook, or send me an email. I'm going to try to share the screen that has my email on it, so you can write that down if you didn't write it down already. Let's see, yeah, sparkinnature@gmail.com. Monterey Bay Nature Journal Club if you're on Facebook. And if not, just send me an email. And if you'd like a link to the recording, send me an email or a message in Facebook, and I will send you a link. And if you would like to support the work that I do and continuing free Nature Journal events, I think I'm going to go into May. So every Sunday, join us in this community. You can send a donation to paypal.me/alpacamel. So with that, I would love to say you guys have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. And oh, Brian, who is also on this call, does a virtual call on Saturdays. So if you're interested, if you go to our Facebook page, there's a link for his his Nature Journal group as well. So I look forward to seeing your posts of some of your work. All right, if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute. I think I can, or do I have to unmute? Let's see. Brian, can you unmute everyone? Okay, all right.
Did you want a picture of a screenshot of
Oh
everyone's
shoot, yeah,
work?
I do want to. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so if everyone
That
can
was
hold
Celia
up.
who was
Girls,
on it.
come on back. You want to hold up your work, buddy? I'm going to do a screenshot of everyone's work.
All right, let's see if I can do. I'm not sure if I can. It's Shift Command 4.
That'll be neat. Hold it higher, Rosemary. Rosemary.
No, I don't want to. I didn't do anything today. I'm just holding the book.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, one more time. Hold it up. Didn't get everybody in there. All right. I think I got that. Nice. Oh, this was so fun.
Work, everyone. Really.
Yeah. Great work. Keep looking at nature.
I love the way that, you know, we all theoretically go out to do the same thing and come up with completely different things. There's always like a similarity or a tie or a thread in there, and just, you know, and yet a different take on it. That's one reason I really like doing group sketching.
Yeah, it's kind of like we did 12 Nature Journal pages today. We learned from each and every one of us. All right, so if you have any questions, you know how to contact me, and just get out into nature.
Thank you. Same time next week.
Yep, same time next week, 9:30. Yeah, in the morning. All right, take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Linda.
Bye.